Hello everyone, welcome to Rise of Coding. In this tutorial we're going to build a complete React portfolio website from scratch. This site is fully responsive, works across all devices, and includes smooth animations for a modern look. By the end of this video, you'll have your own professional portfolio ready to showcase your work. This portfolio contains a side navbar that smoothly scrolls to each section, built with a responsive design and animation effects. This portfolio includes a responsive hero section, with a dynamic typing effect. And includes a responsive About Me section, with animation effects, and highlighting your achievements, and has a quick access to resume and contact options. And features a responsive stats section, with animated counters, that showcase achievements. And includes a responsive skills section, with animated progress bars. And includes a responsive resume section, with animated elements, that presenting professional experience, and education, and certifications, and technical skills. And features a responsive portfolio section, with animated filtering and lightbox effects, that showing various projects across different categories. And features a responsive and animated service cards, showing development and design expertise. And features responsive contact form, with smooth animations and interactive submission feedback. Alright, let's start setting up our React project from scratch. First, I'll create a new React app using Vite. I'll name the project as Portfolio. And I'll choose React with JavaScript. Now I'll move into the project folder, and install the default dependencies. Next, we will install all the libraries that we need in this project. This includes Bootstrap and Bootstrap icons for styling, and AOS for scroll animations, and glightbox for image pop-ups, and typed.js for typing effects, and React countup for number animations, and isotope layout for filtering and sorting. Then, we will import Bootstrap globally inside main.jsx, so its styles are available everywhere. Then, we will add our custom global styles inside index.css. First, we will define some CSS variables for fonts and colors. So we can reuse the same design values throughout the project, and makes it much easier to update later. Next, we will set up the base styles for the body, and the links, and the headings. To make sure the whole site has consistent typography, background, and link behavior. Then we will create some reusable section styles, including padding and background options. So every section of the site has the same spacing and structure. Finally, we will add styles for section titles, with centered headings and decorative lines. We'll be reusing this style across multiple sections. After that, run the development server to make sure everything is working correctly. Now our React project is fully set up with Bootstrap and all the extra libraries for animations and effects. Now we'll start building the structure of the portfolio website. And the first thing we will create is the Navbar component. The Navbar will be fixed on the side, and it will allow us to quickly navigate between all the sections of the portfolio. And it's fully responsive. Now I'll open the project in my code editor. And inside the src folder, I'll create a components folder. Then inside that folder, I'll create our Navbar component. First we will define the menu items array. And each item has a link to each section, and an icon from Bootstrap icons, and a label. Next, we will add another array for the social links. And each item has an icon and a link. And we'll display these icons at the bottom of the Navbar. Now let's return the Navbar layout inside the component. We will wrap everything inside a header element and give it some Bootstrap classes and custom classes to align the content vertically. Inside the header, we will create the navigation menu. So we will map over the menu items array we defined earlier, so each item automatically generates a list element with an icon and a label. Below the menu, we will add the social links section. And this works the same way, so we will map through the social links array and display each social media icon as a link. Now the Navbar structure is ready, and we will switch over to the index.css file to add the styles for it. We'll start with the header class. This is the main container for the Navbar. It's fixed on the left side of the screen, and covering the full height from top to bottom. I also give it a background color, some padding, and make it scrollable. Inside the header, we have the header container. This adds extra padding and rounded corners, and I also apply a subtle border with transparency. Next, let's style the social links. Each social icon is placed inside a circle, centered both vertically and horizontally. And they have a soft background color by default, and on hover, the background switches to the accent color while the icon changes to a darker contrast color. This gives a nice interactive feel. Finally, we'll work on the nav menu. The menu itself takes the full width, with no list styles and clean spacing. Each link inside has an icon and a label, aligned side by side. By default, the links use a lighter color, and when you hover or activate them, the text color changes to white while the icon highlights with the accent color. This creates clear feedback when navigating between sections. Now the navbar component is ready and styled, so let's add it to our application. Inside app.jsx, I simply import the navbar and render it so it appears on every page. And here it is on the screen. The navbar is fixed to the left, showing the navigation links with their icons, as well as the social media links at the bottom. The design is clean and minimal, and it stays in place as we scroll through the website. Later on, we'll also make sure this navbar adapts to smaller screens so it works perfectly on mobile devices too. And to make the navbar responsive, we need to add a toggle system that works on smaller screens. So we will create a state called isOpen, with a toggleNav function that switches the menu on and off, and a closeNav function that makes sure the menu closes whenever a link is clicked. Then inside the return statement, we will update the header class name, so it conditionally applies the header show class only when the menu is open. And then we will add the toggle menu button. This button shows a hamburger icon by default, and when clicked it opens the menu and changes to a close icon. And in the navigation links, we will include the on-click function, so once a user selects a section, the menu automatically closes. And to finish the responsive navbar, let's add the styles inside index.css. First, we will add the styles for the mobile toggle button. It's positioned at the top right corner, with a circular shape, a background color, and a hover effect. This makes the button stand out and easy to click on smaller screens. Then we will add the media query for screens below 1200 pixels. In this case, the navbar slides off the screen by default, so it doesn't take up space on mobile. Then we will define the header show class. So when this class is active, the navbar slides back in from the left, making it visible again. And this works together with our React state to open and close the menu. With these styles, the navbar is now fully responsive, switching between a fixed sidebar on desktop and a toggle menu on mobile. Now, let's move on to building the hero section. This will be a fully responsive section with a dynamic typing effect and smooth animations. On the left side, we'll have our main introduction with a dynamic typing effect using the typed.js library, along with call-to-action buttons and social links. And on the right side, we'll display the profile image inside a styled container, and in the background we'll add animated circular elements. In the end, we'll have a modern and engaging hero section that works seamlessly across all devices. So now inside the components folder we will create the hero component. First we'll add the social links array, and each social link will have an icon and a URL. Next we'll set up the AOS library to handle scroll animations. So inside a use effect, we'll initialize it with a 1-second duration, and configure it to run only once when elements come into view. Now we'll set up the main structure of the hero section. First we'll add 3 background circles to create a soft and animated visual effect. Inside the hero content area, we will split everything into 2 sides with Bootstrap's grid system. On the left side, we will apply AOS library with fade right and a slight delay, to animate the content as it scrolls into view. And then we will include a heading with the person's name and a description, using custom classes and Bootstrap classes. Then we will add 2 action buttons. Button scroll to the projects section with Bootstrap class, while the other scroll to the contact section with a custom class. Right under the buttons, we will map through the social links array. And we will render a link with the Bootstrap icon. On the right side, we again apply AOS library with fade left and a longer delay, so it animates after the text. Then we will create a profile container with a custom background, and contains the profile image, which stored in the image folder inside the public directory. Next, we will add the typing effect to the hero section. After initializing AOS library, we will use the typed.js library on the span with class name of typed. To cycle through different roles, like React developer and front-end engineer, with smooth typing and backspacing speeds. And finally, we will add a cleanup function to remove the effect when the component unmounts. Now we'll add the styles for the hero section in the index.css file. First, we style the hero class. It takes the full viewport height, uses flex to center its content vertically, hides any overflowing elements, and positions itself relative for the background effects. Then we style the background elements. And it's positioned absolutely to cover the entire hero section, sits behind the main content with a low z-index, and hides any overflowing parts to contain the animated background circles. Then, we style each BG circle class inside the background elements. They're absolutely positioned with circular shapes, and use a subtle gradient for a soft effect, and animate continuously with a floating motion using the float keyframes. Next, we set the size, position, and animation delays for the 3 background circles to create a dynamic floating effect. Then, we style the hero content class to be relative with full width, and sit above the background circles with a higher z-index. Next, we style the main heading inside the hero text with a large, bold font and a short line height for impact. We also style the accent text span to emphasize part of the heading by applying the accent color. We also style the accent text after element to create an underline effect. It's positioned just below the text and uses a gradient with the accent color for a subtle and modern highlight. Next, we style the subheading in the hero text with a slightly smaller and semi-bold font, with the main heading color, and with vertical margins to separate it from other elements. Next, we style the lead paragraph with a larger font, and with bottom margin, and with the default text color. And we also style any span inside it, with the accent color, and with a semi-bold weight, and with a subtle bottom border for emphasis. Next, we style the description paragraph with a moderate font size, and with slightly faded text color, and with bottom margin, and with a maximum width to keep the text comfortably readable. Next, we style the hero actions container as a flexible row with wrapping, and with spacing between items, and with a bottom margin to separate it from other content. Next, we style the hero buttons with generous padding, and with medium font size and weight, and with rounded corners, and solid border, and no text decoration, and smooth transition effects for interactions. Next, we style the primary hero button with the accent background, and contrasting text, and matching border. And on hover, the button darkens slightly, and moves upward, and shows a subtle shadow for a modern interactive effect. Next, we style the outline hero button with a transparent background, and with accent-colored text and border. And on hover, it fills with the accent color, and changes the text to the contrast color, and moves upward slightly for a subtle interactive effect. Next, we style the hero social links as a horizontal row with spacing between each icon for a clean, organized layout. Next, we style each social link as a circular icon with centered content, and with subtle background, and semi-transparent text. And on hover, the icon changes color, and lifts slightly, and adds a soft shadow for an interactive feel. Next, we style the hero visual container as a flexbox, centering its content both horizontally and vertically. Next, we style the profile container with a fixed width and height, and set it to relative positioning to allow layered elements inside. Next, we style the profile background as an absolutely positioned layer inside the container, with a subtle accent-colored overlay, rounded corners, and a lower z-index behind the main image. Then we style the profile image to fill the container, and maintain its aspect ratio with object fit, with having rounded corners, and sit above the background with a higher z-index. Then we define a simple floating animation that moves elements up and down smoothly, which we apply to the background circles for a dynamic effect. Then we add responsive styles for smaller screens. So the hero text, and the description, buttons, and social links are centered, and the font sizes are adjusted, and the profile container is slightly reduced to maintain a balanced layout on all devices. And we apply similar adjustments for even smaller screens to ensure the hero section remains clean and readable on mobile devices. Then, in app.jsx, we add the hero component inside a container with the class name of main. We also style this container by adding a left margin on large screens, ensuring the content doesn't overlap with the fixed sidebar. Now, let's take a look at the final hero section in action. As everything is fully responsive, and the animations are working smoothly, and the layout sits perfectly beside the sidebar on all screen sizes. Now let's move on to the About section. This will be a fully responsive section, and will also use the AOS library for smooth scroll animations. At the top, we'll have a section header, right below that a description area, then a stats grid, followed by a details grid, and finally a call to action section with 2 buttons. So let's create the About component inside our Components folder. We'll start by setting up the AOS library for scroll animations. For that, I'll use the useEffect hook and initialize the AOS library with a 1-second duration, and make sure the animation runs only once. Now let's structure the About section. We start with the main section element, which has custom classes like About and Section, with ID of About. Inside it we add a container from Bootstrap, and here we also apply AOS for a fade-up animation with a short delay. Next, we add a row with 1 column that stretches across the whole width on large screens. This column also has a fade-left animation with a slight delay. Then we will add the main content of the section. At the top, there's the section header with a badge and a title. Then, we include a description area with 2 paragraphs. Then we add the stats grid using custom styling. And it displays 3 items, and each item highlights a bold number at the top with a descriptive label right underneath. After the stats we include a details grid, and it also styled with custom classes. This grid is organized into rows, and each row contains 2 items side by side. And every item shows a label on the left, and a value on the right that gives more information. Then we add the call to action section, including 2 buttons with bootstrap icons. Next we style the About section inside index.css. We start by adding padding to the About content, and then give the section header some bottom margin for spacing. Then we style the badge text inside the header. It gets a gradient background, with white text, and some padding, with rounded corners, and bold uppercase styling to make it stand out as a label. Then we style the main heading by making it large and bold, with tighter line spacing, and no extra margin. Then we style the description section by adding some space at the bottom. And each paragraph gets a medium font size, and more line height for easier reading, and a lighter text color. We also add spacing between paragraphs, but remove it from the last one to keep things neat. Then we style the stats section with a grid layout that splits into 3 equal columns. We add spacing between the items, and some padding inside, and a soft background color. The whole box also has rounded corners and a light shadow to make it stand out. Then we style each stat item. The text is centered, the number is made bigger, bold, and highlighted with the accent color. Below it, the label is shown in a smaller size with a softer color. Then we style the details section. It's built with rows, and each row uses a 2-column grid. There's spacing between the items and some margin below each row, except the last one. Then we style the detail items. Each label is smaller, and lighter, and has a softer color to act as a heading. Below it, the value is bolder and darker, making it stand out more. Then we style the call to action section. The buttons sit side by side with spacing between them, and they wrap on smaller screens. And each button has padding, and rounded corners, with bold text, and a smooth hover transition. We also align the icon and text neatly using flex. Then we style the primary button. It uses the accent color for the background and switches the text to the contrast color. And on hover, the background darkens slightly, and the button lifts up with a small transform, and a soft shadow is added. Then we style the outline button. It starts with a transparent background, and muted text color, and a soft border. And on hover, the border switches to the accent color and the button lifts slightly for a clean interactive effect. Then we make the About section responsive. So on medium screens, we remove the left padding. And on smaller screens, we reduce the header size, and stack the stats into a single column, and also stack the detail rows for better readability. Then we add the About component into the app.jsx, right after the Hero section. So now we can check the browser to see the final result of the About section with its animations and styles in place. Next, we'll create the stats section. We're using the AOS library for scroll animations, and CountUp library for animated numbers. So inside the components folder we will create the stats component. And inside the stats component, we will use the useEffect hook to initialize the AOS library, with a duration of 1 second and run it once. Now we'll build the stats section structure. We start with a section that gives us a structured layout and a light background to keep the focus on the content. Inside it we add a container that will animate with a fade-up effect, as the user scrolls, creating a smooth entrance for the whole section. Then we use a row to center everything on the screen. And a single column that controls the width, so the content doesn't stretch too wide on larger devices. Within this column, we place a custom wrapper that will hold all the stat items together in a grid. Each stat item will animate in with a zoom effect, one after the other, giving a nice staggered animation. Inside each item we place an icon at the top to visually represent the stat. Followed by a number that animates from 0 to its target using the CountUp library. Below the number, we add a short label to describe what the stat represents. Then we'll repeat the same stat item structure 3 more times, changing only the icon, and the number, and the label to show different stats. Next, we'll style the stats section in the index.css file. We start by styling the stats wrapper as a grid layout, with 4 equal columns and spacing between the items. Then we style each stats item with a soft background, and rounded corners, with padding, and a centered layout. We also add a hover effect that slightly lifts the card, increases the shadow, and scales up the icon for a more interactive feel. Then we style the icon wrapper as a circle and center the icon inside it. The icon itself is made larger, and we add a smooth transition so it reacts nicely on hover. Then we style the counter number to stand out by making it large and bold, and using the heading font. It's also spaced slightly from the label below. Then we style the text label by giving it a clean font, with medium weight, and a subtle opacity to keep the focus on the number above. Then we give each stats item its own color theme, by styling the icon wrapper and the icon itself. This makes every stat stand out and gives the section a more vibrant look. Then we make the stats section responsive by adjusting the grid. So on medium screens, it switches to 2 columns, and on small screens, it stacks into a single column. Now we add the stats component to the app.jsx file. So now we can check the browser to see the final result of the stats section in action. After finishing the stats section, we move on to the skills section. Here, we create a section to showcase different skills in a clear and animated way. So let's navigate to the editor and create a new skills component inside the components folder. We'll start by setting up the animation. So we use the useEffect to initialize AOS library, and giving it a duration of 1 second, and making sure it only runs once. After that we'll import the AOS stylesheet so the animations display correctly. Next we will build the structure of the section. We start with a section element, and give it an ID of skills. And add the section title inside a container that has a fade-up animation applied, so the title will smoothly animate as it appears on scroll. Then we wrap the content inside a container with a fade-up animation and a delay. And inside that container we create a row, and within the row, we split the layout into two columns. The left one is for front-end development, and the other one is for back-end development. Inside each column we have the heading placed within a skills category section, which uses a fade-up animation with a slight delay. After the heading we will add the skill items, and each one showing the skill name, and its percentage, and a progress bar that we will later animate. Then we'll repeat this skill item 2 more times, changing only the skill name and the percentage for each one. Then we will repeat the same column structure again, for the back-end skills. Changing the heading, and in the skill items names, and their percentages. To animate the progress bars, we need first to add a state to control when the progress bars fill up. And create a section ref to detect when the skills section comes into view on the screen. Next we set up an intersection observer to check when the skills section enters the screen. So once it becomes visible, we update our state to true, so the progress bars start filling up. And then we disconnect the observer so it only runs once. We also set a threshold of 0.3, so the animation starts when about 30% of the section is visible. And we make sure to attach the observer to our section element, so it knows when that part of the page becomes visible. Finally we clean up by disconnecting the observer inside the return function. Then we connect the reference to the section by attaching it to the section tag. Then we add an inline style to each progress bar. So when the animate state is true, the bar fills smoothly up to the skills percentage. Now let's style the skills component in the index.css file. We start by styling the skills category sections. Each section gets a background color, with padding, and rounded corners, and a subtle shadow for depth. We also add a hover effect so the section slightly lifts when hovered. Then we style the headings inside each skills category. The headings have some space below them, and we add a line under each heading to make it stand out. Then we style each skill item by adding some spacing between them. We also make the skill name slightly larger and give it some space below to separate it from the progress bar. Then we style the skill percentage to make it a bit smaller, and give it a softer color so it doesn't overpower the skill name or the progress bar. Then we style the progress bar. The track has a soft background and rounded edges, while the filling bar uses our accent color, and smoothly expands when the animate state is triggered. For responsive screens, we will add spacing below each skills category to separate them, except for the last one, so the layout stays neat on smaller devices. Finally, we add the skills component to the app.jsx file to see the completed section in action. Now that we've finished the skills section, let's move on to the resume section. In the resume section, we have two main sides. On the left, we see a profile picture, and a short summary, and contact info, and skill bars that fill up as we scroll. On the right, there's professional experience, and education, and certifications. Each part appearing with smooth fade-up animations. And this whole section is fully responsive, so it adapts nicely to any screen size. Now let's move over to the editor and start building the resume section step by step. We will create the resume component inside the components folder. We'll start by setting up the AOS library for the resume section. And inside the use effect, we initialize it with a duration of 1 second and make sure it runs only once. Then we import the AOS stylesheet so the animations will work properly. Then we begin building the resume component structure. We start with a section element, and give it an ID of resume. Inside of it we add a container for the section title with the resume heading. Then we're adding a container with a fade-up animation. Inside of it, we place a row that splits the layout into 2 columns. On the left side, we add a column with a smooth fade-right animation. This section will hold the profile image, and a professional summary, and contact information, and technical skills. So first we start with the profile image at the top. The image is stored inside the Images folder. And we make it fluid and rounded so it fits nicely in the layout. After the image, we add a professional summary section with a heading and a short description. Then we add a contact information section with a heading and a simple list. And it includes location, and email, and phone number, and a GitHub link, and each one paired with a bootstrap icon for a clean and professional look. After that, we add the technical skills section. With the technical skills heading and the skills list. The skills are stored in an array, and we simply map over them to display each skill with its name and its percentage. Along with a progress bar that visually represents the level of expertise. Then we'll animate the progress bars so they fill up smoothly, making the skills section more dynamic. Just like we did before in the skills section, we start with a state called animate and a section reference. Inside a use effect, we set up an intersection observer with a threshold of 30%. And when the section becomes visible, we set animate to true so the progress bars can fill, and then disconnect the observer so it only runs once. Next, if our reference is attached to the section, we tell the observer to observe it. And finally, inside the return function, we disconnect the observer as a cleanup step. Then we need to attach the reference to our section. So in the opening section tag, we add ref equals section ref. Now let's add the inline style for the progress bar. So when the animation is triggered, the bar will grow from 0 to the skill percentage smoothly, giving a nice animated effect. After completing the left side, we now move on to the right column. This column is organized into 3 main sections. And each section is neatly structured and includes smooth animations as we scroll. First, we'll build the experience section with fade-up animation. And inside the experience section, we first have the main title. Then we add 2 items. Each item has a job title, and the time period, and the company name, and a list of main tasks. Then we will create the education section with fade-up animation and slight delay. And then we start with the main title. And we add 1 section item that shows the degree, and the time period, and the university name, and a short description. Then we move to the certification section with fade-up animation and delay. And it starts with the main title. And then we add 2 section items, each one showing the certificate name and the year earned. Now let's add the styles for the resume section inside the index.css file. We start by styling the resume side section. It gets a background color, and padding all around, with rounded corners, and a soft shadow for depth. And we make sure it stretches to take the full height. Then we style the profile image in the resume side. As the image is centered, and given a soft accent border, and rounded into a perfect circle. Then we style the section titles. Using a larger font size, with bold weight, and the heading color to stand out clearly. Then we move on to the contact information list. Each item is spaced out for better readability and uses the default text color. And the icons are styled with the accent color, and given a fixed width, and placed with a little margin so they line up neatly with the text. Then we style the skill items. Each skill block gets some space below it to keep the layout clean. And the text labels inside are slightly smaller and use the default color to stay consistent with the overall design. Then we style the progress bars. The container has a slim height, with rounded corners, and a faint background. And the progress bar itself uses the accent color, and we add a smooth transition so the width animates nicely when it loads. Then for the resume sections on the right side, we add spacing between each section, and style the titles with a larger font, with bold weight, and heading color. And the icons inside the titles are also highlighted with the accent color. Each resume item is styled with a left border, giving it a clear timeline look. And we also add a circular marker before each item, making the layout feel like a professional timeline. The job titles are styled to stand out with a bold heading color, while the dates are highlighted in the accent color to make them easy to spot. And the company name is styled with a slightly smaller font size and with the same heading color, while the building icon gets a little space to the right for clear alignment. And the list inside each resume item is pushed slightly to the right for neat alignment. And each list point is spaced apart and shown in the default text color. While the paragraphs use the same default color, with no extra space below them for a clean layout. Then we add a responsive style, so when the screen gets smaller, we give the resume side section some extra bottom margin to keep everything spaced nicely. Then we add the resume component to the app.jsx file to see the completed section in action. Now we will move to the portfolio section. This section is designed to showcase different projects in an interactive way. On the left side there are filters for categories. And clicking a filter shows only matching projects. And this is powered by the Isotope library. And on the right side the projects appear in a masonry layout. And each card has an image, and a category, and a title. And on hovering shows more options, like opens the image in a lightbox using G-Lightbox. And as we scroll, the elements animate into view, making the portfolio clean and interactive. The layout is also fully responsive, adjusting the filters and project cards for smaller screens. Now that we've seen how the portfolio section works in the browser, we will move to the editor to build this section step by step. So inside the Components folder we will create the portfolio component. Just like we did in the previous component, we will set up the AOS library for scroll animations. So inside the Use Effect hook, we initialize it with a 1-second duration, and the animation runs only once. And we will import the AOS stylesheet to make sure the animations display correctly. And now we will build the section structure. We will give the section an ID of portfolio, and inside it we will add a container with a fade-up animation that holds the portfolio title. Then we will create a container that will hold all the portfolio items with animation effects. So we will start with a container that has a fade-up animation and a small delay. Inside it, we add a row, and within that row we create a column that takes most of the space. And inside that column, we will build another row that acts as the portfolio container, with spacing, and a fade-up animation with a longer delay. Then we will create the portfolio items. And each item will take half the width on medium and large screens. And inside it, we will place a wrapper that holds the project image, with image fluid class and with lazy loading. And after the image we will add the portfolio information box. And it includes the category, and the project title, and the links. Then we will repeat the same portfolio item structure to display more projects. And for each item, we only change the data such as the image, and the category, and the project title. After that, we're going to use the Isotope library inside our portfolio section. Isotope is a JavaScript library that helps us create dynamic grids. It can filter items, and sort them, and arrange them in layouts, such as a Pinterest-style masonry grid. And in our case, we'll mainly use it for filtering with smooth animations. So first we will make a reference called Isotope to store the Isotope instance. And another reference called GridRef to point to our portfolio grid container. Then we will create a state called ActiveFilter with a default value of star. And the star means to show all the items. After that we will initialize Isotope inside a useEffect hook. And if the grid reference exists, we will assign a new Isotope instance to it. And we will pass in two options. The first one is the item selector, and it is set to portfolio item, which means each grid card. And the layout mode, and it is set to masonry, to get that nice Pinterest style layout. After that we will create a function called handleFilter that takes a filter value. First it updates the ActiveFilter state to know which button is active. Then if Isotope is ready, we call the arrange method. And if the filter is star, it shows all items. Otherwise, it only shows the items that match that filter. After that we're going to wrap the row inside a main container with the class name of Isotope layout. This container acts as the main wrapper that holds both the filter sidebar and the portfolio items. Inside this layout, we will create a column for the sidebar. This column has the class name of filter sidebar, and inside it we place a list of filter buttons. Inside it we will add another wrapper with the class name of filters wrapper. And this wrapper also has the fade right animation with a delay, which makes the filters slide in nicely when they appear. And inside this animated wrapper, we will add an unordered list of filter buttons. And each list item represents a filter category. And it will filter the projects based on those categories. And each filter button is connected to the handleFilter function. So when click on a filter, it tells Isotope which projects to display. And at the same time, the button checks whether it's the selected filter. So if it is, it gets an active style so the user can easily see which filter is currently applied. After that, in the grid container we will add the grid reference so it can connect with the Isotope library. And we also include the class name of Isotope container to make the filtering system work correctly. And for each portfolio item, we will add the class name of isotope item. And along with it, we will assign a specific filter class that matches its category, so the filtering system can group and display items correctly. After that we will add the G-Lightbox library to open images in a Lightbox view. So we will initialize it inside a useEffect hook using the G-Lightbox selector, to activate the image preview feature. Then we import the G-Lightbox CSS file to apply the Lightbox styling and ensure images open smoothly in a pop-up when clicked. Then we will add the G-Lightbox class and a title to the anchor tag inside the portfolio links for each portfolio item. This ensures that all project images are connected to the G-Lightbox setup, and allowing them to open in a pop-up with their respective titles when clicked. Next we will move to the index.css file to add the styles for the portfolio section. We start by styling the sidebar filters. We give the filters wrapper a soft background using a color mix, and add padding for spacing, and rounded corners with a border radius, and a lightbox shadow for depth. Then we style the portfolio filters by removing default padding, and margin, and list bullets. Then we use Flexbox to arrange the filter items in a vertical column with spacing between each one. Then we style each filter item to look clickable with a pointer cursor and padding for balance. And the text uses the default color with a smooth transition for hover effects. And on hover, the text color changes to the accent color, and the background becomes lightly tinted, and a colored border appears on the left to highlight the active state. Then we style the active filter item to clearly show it's selected. So the text and left border use the accent color, and the background gets a light tint of the same color, and the font weight increases for emphasis. Then we style the portfolio card container with rounded corners, with a light shadow, and hidden overflow to keep the layout clean. And the image inside smoothly scales on hover, keeps its aspect ratio with object fit, and has matching rounded corners for a consistent design. Then we create an overlay for the portfolio info section by positioning it at the bottom of the card and adding a dark gradient background. And it starts slightly shifted down and invisible, then transitions smoothly when revealed. And the padding provides space for the content, and a high z-index keeps it above the image. Then we animate the content section so it starts slightly lower and moves smoothly upward when it appears. And we style the category label with uppercase text, with tighter letter spacing, and the accent color to make it stand out above the title. And we make the main heading larger, and bold, and colored with the accent tone to keep it readable and consistent with the portfolio theme. Then we design the portfolio link section as a compact row of circular buttons spaced evenly apart. And each link is a perfect circle with a soft accent background and a centered icon, giving it a clean and balanced appearance. And when hovered, the circle's color becomes fully accented, and it gently rises upward to signal interactivity. And the smooth transitions and rounded edges help maintain a polished and modern look that fits seamlessly with the rest of the portfolio card design. Then we enhance the portfolio card with engaging hover effects to make it feel interactive and alive. So when hovered, the entire card subtly lifts upward to create depth, and the image smoothly scales up for a zoom-in effect. And at the same time, the hidden information overlay slides into place and fades in, revealing the project details clearly. And the content inside the overlay also shifts into position, completing the animation. So together, these effects create a smooth and dynamic hover experience that draws attention to each portfolio item. And to make the portfolio section responsive, we adjust its layout for smaller screens. So the filter sidebar gains extra spacing below to prevent crowding, and the wrapper padding is reduced for better fit. And the filter buttons switch from a vertical column to a flexible horizontal layout that wraps and centers, ensuring easy navigation on mobile devices. And each filter button also gets a light border with a subtle accent color, keeping the design consistent while improving touch accessibility and readability on compact screens. After setting up the styles, we'll move to the app.jsx file to render the portfolio section and see the final result in action. Now we're moving to the services section. It introduces the main services with a heading and short summary at the top, followed by 3 animated cards. And the design is fully responsive. On large screens it's side by side, and on smaller devices it stacks neatly with cards adjusting to 1 or 2 columns. Now we'll move to the editor to start creating this component from scratch. So inside the components folder we will create the services component. We will start with initialize the AOS library inside a useEffect hook, and also include the AOS stylesheet to make sure the animations display correctly. Then we will build the structure of our services component. We return a section with the ID of services and the class name of services section. First we will create a container for the section title with a fade-up animation that have the H2 of services. After the title section we'll add another container with a fade-up animation and a slight delay. Inside this container, we'll create the intro row for the service header. It's divided into 2 columns, the left side will hold the main heading. And the right side will include a short description along with a button. Then after the service header we will create the services grid. So we'll add a row and center the content to keep the layout balanced. Inside this row, we'll create the service cards. And for each service card, we'll create a column with a fade-up animation and a slight delay. And inside this column, we'll build the service card container. At the top of this container we will add the service icon. Then we'll add a small circular action button with an arrow icon, giving the card an interactive touch. After that, we'll add the service title, followed by a short paragraph that describes the service. After that, we'll repeat the service card 2 more times, keeping the same structure but increasing the delay duration for each one. And also change the icon, and the title, and the paragraph to represent the other services. Now we'll move to the index.css file to start styling the services component. We start by styling the service header. We add spacing below it to separate the header from the service cards and keep the layout balanced. Then we style the main heading inside the service intro. We make it large and bold, and use the heading color for strong emphasis. Then we style the span element inside the heading to appear on a new line and highlight it with the accent color for contrast. Then we style the paragraph inside the service summary. We give it spacing below to separate it from the button, and apply the default text color. Then we style the service button to appear as an inline flex element centered vertically. And give it the accent color for the background and the contrast color for the text, with rounded corners and a smooth hover transition. And on hover the background slightly lightens, keeping the button interactive and consistent with the overall theme. Then we style the icon inside the button to add a small space between it and the text, keeping the layout balanced. And when hover over the button, the icon smoothly shifts to the right, creating a dynamic motion effect. Then we style each service card with some padding and space below it. And a light border with the accent color to keep it clean, and the smooth transition makes hover effects feel natural. Then we style the service icon. It sits inside a rounded square with a soft accent background and centered alignment. And the icon itself is larger, colored with the accent tone, and includes a smooth transition for hover animations. Then we style the service card heading by setting a larger font size, with bold weight, and spacing below it. And the paragraph by giving it the default text color, and removing bottom margin, and adding a smooth color transition. Then we style the card action button by positioning it in the top right corner of the card, giving it a fixed size and centering the icon inside. And it starts hidden with zero opacity and is slightly shifted downward, with a smooth transition ready for hover effects. Then we style the icon inside the card action by setting its size and color, and adding a smooth transition. And when hovering over the button, the icon rotates slightly to create a dynamic effect. Then we add a decorative overlay behind each service card using a pseudo-element. It covers the entire card with a background color and a stylish polygon shape. The overlay starts hidden with zero opacity and transitions smoothly, ready to appear on hover for a dynamic visual effect. Then we add hover effects to make each service card interactive. So when hovering, the card's border becomes transparent and the decorative overlay appears with a soft accent color. And the heading link changes color, and the paragraph text becomes slightly lighter. And the card action button fades in and moves into place, while the icon inside the service card slightly scales up for a dynamic effect. Then we add responsive styles to ensure the services section looks good on all screen sizes. So on medium screens, the heading becomes smaller and the summary gets extra spacing on top. And on smaller screens, the heading and card titles shrink further, and the service card padding is adjusted, and the icons are repositioned. And overall section padding is also updated to keep everything balanced and readable on tablets and mobile devices. Now we'll import the services component into the app.jsx file, so we can see the complete section live in the browser. Now we will move to the contact section. The section includes a clean contact form with input fields and a send button, that displays loading and success messages after submission. And its fully responsive layout that adapts perfectly across all screen sizes. So now let's move to the editor to start creating the contact component from scratch. Inside the components folder we will create the contact component. First we will initialize the AOS library inside the useEffect hook to activate scroll animations when the component mounts. After that we'll build the component structure by creating a section element with the ID of contact. Then we will create a container for the section title with a fade-up animation. After this container we will create another container for the form. And inside it, we add a row container that centers all content horizontally using Justify Content Center. Inside it, we create a responsive column that adjusts its width across large and medium screens. This column also includes AOS fade-up animation with a short delay, giving the section a smooth and dynamic entrance as it appears on scroll. Inside this column, we will create a div with class name of contact form, that centers its content using Text Center. This div includes a heading and a short paragraph that provides a brief message for visitors. After the paragraph, we add a form section. And inside the form, we create a row container that holds several columns. Each column includes an input field for the user's name, an email, and subject, along with a larger text area for the message. After that, we add a submit button for sending the form. Then we define a state object named form data to store the user's input values. It keeps track of the name, and the email, and the subject, and message fields so the form can update and reset dynamically. Then we create a handle change function to update the form data. Each time the user types, it captures the input name and value, then updates the corresponding field in the state. Then we create the handle submit function to manage the form submission. It prevents the default browser behavior so we can handle the form logic manually inside the component. Then we connect the form to the handle submit function using the onSubmit attribute. Then we add the value and onChange properties to each input field and text area. And this connects them to the form data state, keeping all fields updated and synchronized as the user types. Then we create a status state to track the form's current state, such as when it's loading or when the message has been sent successfully. Then inside the handle submit function, we set the status to loading when the form is submitted. And after a short delay, the status changes to sent, and the form data resets, clearing all input fields. Then after the submit button, we display feedback messages based on the form status. After that, we'll move to the index.css file to start styling the contact component. We begin by styling the contact form container with a light background, and padding, and rounded corners for a modern look. And adding a soft shadow to make it gently stand out. Then we style the form heading with a larger font size and add some space below it for separation. And the paragraph gets a softer color tone and extra spacing to keep the layout clear and easy to read. Then we style the input fields with some padding, and rounded corners, with soft border and background colors for a clean look. And when focused, the border changes to the accent color to highlight the active field. And the placeholder text is given a lighter shade to make it subtle but readable. Then we style the button with a bold accent background and contrasting text for clear visibility. And with rounded edges, and balanced padding, with a small gap between the icon and text for a neat layout. And when hovered, the background slightly blends with the contrast color, creating a smooth interactive effect. For the responsive design, we make small layout adjustments to ensure the form looks good on all screen sizes. For smaller screens we reduce the padding of the contact form to keep it compact and balanced. And on even smaller devices, the heading size slightly decreases to maintain readability and proper spacing within the layout. Now that we've completed all the styling, we'll move to the app.jsx file and add the contact component to see the final result in action. Now we've completed our React portfolio project from scratch. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more React and front-end projects. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.